Hello everybody, welcome back to the table. In my mind, I've just imagined that people have been waiting to hear my thoughts and opinions on Tank Duel now that I've played it a bit. And I did a playthrough for you all. And I know there's a solo component that I haven't played on camera yet, but I'll talk about it. So I'm very excited about Tank Duel. The too long didn't watch version, this is more enjoyable than I thought it would be. I was very excited to get this because, one, it's tanks, and it's specifically focusing on tank duels. But it's abstracted. It's not on a map kind of a thing. So part of me was like, yeah, I don't know, where do I fit with this? But there was this anticipation and excitement because it's tanks, right? So let's talk about the game and what else I liked about it and maybe some things I didn't like about it. So first of all, here's the back of the box. This is a lot of the content. So you've got a card-driven system, no dice. Now, with that, people really, to me, seem kind of split on that. Do they like the cards, random cards, as far as determining random numbers, or would you prefer dice? I think it doesn't matter to me. It really kind of depends on the style of game that somebody's going for. And for this game, having everything, all the information, everything you need on the cards, I think it's fine. It works out. And we'll take a look at the card and kind of show you what I mean by that. But at the same time, I have heard comments from folks that don't like that kind of thing at all. And, you know, I think if you wanted to replace one aspect of the game, you could, and I don't know how it would mess it up, but instead of using card draws, just get you some percentile dice and roll with that. Roll, because anyway. Now, that would mix up how the cards are set up to where you're supposed to be pulling out cards, you know, leadership cards, move cards. So if you did switch to dice, I think that would really, really mess up the dynamic of the game that they have. But I think you could do that. If you hated card draws to determine when things happen, I didn't try it with dice. It was just a thought that I had. Maybe you could just try it with percentile dice. But again, that's not how the game was designed. So I don't mind that because I know that it's a card-driven game. I can work with it. It's fine. We'll take a look at the counters and the pieces that they've given you. So you do get 220 playing cards, but there's a lot of different kinds of cards we'll take a look at. The main battle deck you got is labeled 1 through 100. And see, that's why some people I know don't like that, is because there's only one chance to draw 22 necessarily on one playthrough before you reshuffle. Whereas dice, you don't ever know what you're going to get, and you can repeat numbers and things. But you get 220 cards, 16 double-sided tank boards, 2.5 full-color counter sheets, a rules booklet, a play booklet, 8 player aid cards, 1 Solitaire Advanced Rules player aid card. Now, it does say that the time is about 2 to 3 minutes per game round. I was almost going to disagree with that. I disagree with that in the beginning learning, but that's like any game, right? But yeah, actually, once you have this down, it can play pretty quick. And even as I was doing the one recorded playthrough I posted, it got quicker because you get comfortable with what you're looking for. So yeah, I could see that. If you got a couple folks who know what they're doing, the rounds play really, really quick. You can play up to 8 players. And it does have a full solitaire system, which we'll talk about. It's really, really good. It does say ages 14 up. You know, depending on the person you're playing with, you could go maybe a little bit younger. It's not overly complicated to learn, but 14 seems pretty reasonable. And yeah, you are playing individual tanks that are dueling each other, so that's your game scale. And they have a meter here with their complexity. It's on the low end of medium. Yeah, I kind of agree with that. I think it's definitely one that you have to play to learn. There are some games out there that you can just read the rule book and you got it. But this one, for me, was definitely learned by playing. So I could say it's in there somewhere. And the solitaire suitability, yeah, is super high because it has an amazing solo bot, which we'll talk about. All right, so that's what's the box. That's what you get in here. And it's a hefty box. I even pulled out all of the counters. Counter storage has always been a real pain. So actually, a friend of mine got this for me for Christmas. It's a Plano 3700 series. Plano makes so many storage boxes, but I like this one because, well, it works just fine for this game. If I had more stuff, it's got these inserts, so you can, like a lot of Plano boxes, you can kind of customize. Let me trim that real quick. I'm going to try not to cut myself on camera. Okay, now that I've said that, some of you are waiting for me to... No, I didn't cut myself. But I just know some of you are sick. I hope he cuts himself on camera. But anyway, this one is kind of cool because you can customize the size of some of these bins that you want to use. And so depending on what you're storing, it gives you some flexibility. I would like one, for me personally, where it was all small boxes like that. Because you can make them a little bit bigger, like this, or a little bit smaller for just a few counters. So I do like the modularity of it. But now that I put that won't fit. But anyway, there's a box. So you have different counters. There's really not that many counters that you need. So that's nice. The counter density isn't terribly high. And some of them are just a lot of duplicates of the same thing. So you've got these flanking markers that you can use. You're going to mark down who's flanking who. And there's a couple of each color. Because usually the tanks, let's see, this goes out to 4. Yep, 4, 3. And I think there was like maybe 4 of each of these. But this will give you a chance to kind of indicate who you're flanking. And it has a nice little reminder that it's a +10 combat value against somebody that you're flanking. They also have some spot markers. That way you can quickly indicate on your tank card who you're spotting, which is good. You have some range markers, special ammo. The only special ammo that they have in the game is this APCR, like armor piercing composite rigid shells. But there's markers for that to track how many you have possibly per tank on your scenario that you're playing. We'll let you know. And let's see here, what else you got? I just broke my box here. Ugh. Anyway, there we go, fixed it. Here we've got some weather condition cards, counters, whatever you want to call it. Then I got a big section here for all of your crew members. So you've got assistant drivers, gunners, loaders, commanders. Commanders, you've got several of each type of commander with like a G or an S or an E to tell you their experience level. You have some to hit markers. That way when you fire at something, and if nobody moves, then the next time you shoot, you get a little combat bonus against it. So you have little markers for that. You got some immobility or bog markers, so you can track if you're stuck in mud or that kind of stuff. Range marker for tracking range. So just a few what you would find basic counters, victory point counters, some infantry counters. There are infantry rules in there. And then danger mines kind of stuff. Hold down indicators, because you can go hold down on certain command type or certain terrain types. You can go hold down. It gives you some defensive bonuses, and they even have buttoned, if you want, optional rule. You can play with button tanks or not buttoned up. So for abstract as this is in some regards, there is some complexity there for you. So boom, that's the counters for that game. That box just happened to store everything, so I'm using it. So again, the box here is pretty big. You do get a lot of stuff, and it's heavy. And it's heavy because of those tank cards that we'll take a look at. But here's some of the player aids that you have. So first of all, I had some stuff to pull out to show you, but here's an example of one of the player aids that you have. Now, the player aid is actually fantastic. You can pretty much run the entire game from just this play aid. So it's got your sequence of play, then it breaks down exactly what the draw phase is. So like right here, step 1, draw phase. Boom, draw phase. And you notice that it's numbered. You just find the numbered box to explain what this is. So if you read the rules once and play like the little sample game in the game, then, or in the rules, you can play just about any game with this play aid after that. On the back, it has some of the battle card information that you need. And it's all here. I mean, this play aid is actually really, really good. The only times I had to reference back to the rule book was when I wanted to just clarify questions that I had. So a really good play aid. Then you've got damage cards. I didn't stick these in a baggie. I should have. Thought I did. But here are some of those 220 cards. The cards are really good quality cards. And I mention that because I did not sleeve my cards. Sleeving the cards probably wouldn't be bad for this game, simply because if you play it a lot, there's a lot of shuffling. And I know that shuffling can be really rough on your cards and wear them down. But they've made these are actually pretty heavy duty cards. They have a nice glossy coating on them. But I've debated with myself to sleeve or not to sleeve, only because I like to shuffle when they're sleeved. It's really easy to kind of do alternate modes of shuffling, so you're not bending the cards and putting pressure on them. But anyway, that's a whole other video. But first little set of cards I have here, these are these damage cards, and these are actually really good. So again, everything you need is either on the cards or referenced on the player aid, and this will tell you exactly what kind of damage you did to the enemy tank, again without having to roll a bunch of dice. Once you've drawn your cards and the cards have given you your numerical information, boom, you just match it up with what you got here. Did I hit the turret? Did I hit, like this, the critical hit? If you got a critical hit, it's on the turret. Leader panics. Commander gunner are damaged. Hole or track. Driver panics. So if I hit in the turret, a critical hit, or the hole, gives you some stuff. Oh no, the assistant driver died on that hit. It's okay, they're just the assistant driver if they had one. But anyway, it's even got morale values for the crew, and then it's even got special conditions to check for on special types of hits. And again, if you hit in the turret, the hole, or track, there's in here if it's heavy damage, and I'll kind of show you how you determine heavy damage. But this gives you everything you need just on a card that you draw. Oh, I think that's a hit. Catastrophic kill, no survivors. Reshuffle the deck. Oh, that's a good one to draw. But again, I think, I won't mention this again, it's just that I do know some people don't like have to draw a card, because then once you draw that card, you can pull it out of the mix. You're not going to get that card again. So the chances of you drawing certain damage effects are very, very low, right? That's why it has a reshuffle card in there, because you're going to shuffle the deck on occasion. And I know, and I understand that's why some people prefer damage charts, because then there's no stacking of the deck per se, right? You're not going to pull out a certain amount of cards, and there's only a certain amount of critical hit 2s. There's only a certain amount of critical hit 7s. So, you know, I'll leave that as the last comment on that. But for this game, I think the card system is fine. And the cards look pretty too. Like, here's some reminders. Is it broken? Did you hit certain damage on the tank, and now it's got, you know, penalties for -1 from hand size, and then there's one, your tank is on fire. I love that. -1 from your hand size. So it's just a nice little graphical thing to stick down. Then there is, these are not part of the damage cards, but here's your in turn and shuffle. I'm going to leave those off to the side for just a second. But you do get lots of cards. Lots of cards. And then here are some additional cards. If I can get my fingers, there we go. Here are some of the cards that you use for the solo bot. And their solo system is really, really good. I'm going to make a playthrough one day of the solo system, and you can see how these work. But for just a few pieces of information on the cards, they really give you a lot of choices that, well, you don't make the choices, but this gives you a lot of things that the enemy bots will do, and it's actually not too shabby in giving you kind of a realistic result of what a human opponent would give. And I don't know. I think this is a really, really good system. It's really better if I can like play it and show it to you, but it's got, I'll explain why I like the solo system here in a little bit. But these are some of the cards that draw the artificial behavior, right? Your artificial intelligence behavior, what they're going to do. Basically, you just follow through. Primary action, this tells you exactly kind of step by step what it's going to try and do, or secondary if it's able to. And it's all based on fully operational, but it's going to be based on, are they evasive, are they bold or alert, and then even on the player aid for the solo, it's going to tell you under certain conditions what kind of card you're going to use, and then that means all of the behavior of your opponent is different just depending on how the game plays out. So it's a really, really cool system. All right, now with that, then here we've got some other cards here. Now, depending on your scenario, you can actually shuffle in some of these additional cards like hill card. Well, you wouldn't shuffle these in, but there is a scenario where you can capture hills, and this gives you the information about the hills you could capture. Tank Dule, damage reference card. That's a nice reference card. Infantry. Yeah, so there's infantry. Even the infantry are driven by cards. Then more information, deep mud, city squares. Now, again, some of these would be used in specific scenarios, but they also have, here's some cards for solo. Spotted move, the solo cards for that. There are some cards that you can shuffle into the deck. They're like replacement cards. So they'll say, okay, take out this card number and insert this card. Again, kind of based on the scenario that you're playing. I think some of those are in here. Yeah, alternate. So normally in your battle deck, which is this big stack here, card 76 might not be a field. It might be something completely different. But again, based on a certain scenario you're playing, it might say, hey, shuffle in the alternate 76 card. That way your battle decks are customized to the scenarios that you play as well. And I thought that's a nice touch. So there you go. But there you go. You got a bunch of alternate cards over here. There's city cards. And again, all these cards will go in based on the scenario that you're playing or mission type. And then you've got your infantry data tables at all. The data tables match what you see on the big tank cards that we'll look at here in a minute. And it's got some infantry data cards as well. So I thought that's a nice touch too. So even though it's called Tank Duel, you can get yourself in some scenarios and battle types where there's infantry as well. So that's pretty neat. And again, kind of all abstracted, but it's there. All right, then you have the main battle deck. The main battle deck, this is your your 100 cards, right? Your percentile dice. And they have a lot of information on them as far as helping you drive the game. You have, like here, mud. So there's combat cards essentially, and then like terrain cards. Let me zoom in a little bit. I'm showing you all these cards from like a blimp view of a stadium. So let's just zoom in just a tad. Okay, I know it's wobbly. All right, but you do get some terrain cards, like here's one for mud. It'll tell you if your target is in motion. So this is when you can play on your opponent, get them stuck in mud. And then it will tell you there's a -10 penalty for them to hit when they're shooting. But people shooting at them get a +10 because they're not moving so fast out of the way. Then some of the cards will tell you what actions you can do. So if you've played like Combat Commander, this concept is pretty familiar. This card can be used for either moving or firing. Now, when I was talking about the numbering system as far as like dice rolls and things like that, the cards that are in like the 99 and like this 91, for example, the higher the card, like the less effective the card is. So like this is a move fire 9, and I'll show you why that's important here in a minute on the tank card itself. But the low number cards like 34 and whatnot, those are more favorable to have. So the higher the number is kind of bad, lower the number the better. So when you take these cards out of play through like discarding or different actions, you are in a way manipulating your dice pool. Works for the cards, all right? But I'm saying, I said I probably wouldn't talk about it anymore, but that's the part where some people don't like that. You're manipulating the dice pool by how you discard cards. And in one way, I think that's fine. If you're a card counter and you can track all the cards coming and going, although I can't really see how you're going to use that to your advantage, but I've mostly played solo, so I haven't been able to like fake out my opponents by manipulating what cards I use to do things. So it might be even a moot point to talk about all your numbers being determined by cards. But anyway, your cards can be used to play actions on somebody, or they can have more than one action that you can do. Like this is move and fire. It's a mud card, but here's a woods card. That's terrain. That would give you bonuses for maybe a possibility to conceal yourself. It gives you cover. There's a chance you can go hold down in it. More mud. Here's an action card, and it's the only action this card has is to fire. It's a fire 2, has a +5 to hit. So you have the cards will give you your actions. And that might be, if again, I can't really call it a complaint or a flaw of the game. It's the nature of a game where all of your actions come from your cards. So again, if you're used to like Combat Commander, this fits at home. You're used to having cards in your hand that you can't do anything with, and you discard and hope you draw something that you want. I've had plenty of games where I only just had like a bunch of move cards. I didn't want to move. I was just waiting to get some fire cards. So that can be a pain too. But narratively, that speaks into the chaos of war. You're in this tank, people are shooting at you, and the crew is befuddled, and they're, the tank is getting dinged, and there's just all this chaos. Makes it difficult to communicate to get the orders across sometimes. But here's a high-level move, 98. But then it usually has information on the card that tells you the gameplay effects. Here's a good command one. Field action, good break. Play as a field action to discard up to 2 cards from your hand, then choose up to 2 cards from the discard pile. That's nice. Or you can gain one of the following: spot, hold down, or attempt to conceal at 2 times the current terrain's conceal value. Nice. So that's a really good card. Now, what are some other pieces of information on your card? Now that you've got like some tactics cards, cards that you can use to manipulate the battle in some way, cards that give you the actions to move or fire, or some that try and let you get into flanking positions or get out of flanking. You have here, I keep forgetting what these are called, but these are basically these little stars. They're going to let you do some actions within the game that you would spend these points on, and that's actually on your player aid. So for example, order icons. So if you have 3 order icons, so if I had in my hand, say at the start of my turn, I've got, usually you get 6 cards. You usually get like 4 in your hand and then 2 per tank or something like that. So if you're playing one tank, you get like 6 cards. So that's 6 cards. So if I had my tank on fire, there is rolling that you can do to try and put the fire out, or your tank will just burn. You can't really do anything with a burning tank. But if you really wanted to do something with your tank, you could spend 3 of these order icons to extinguish. So you'd have to discard those 2 cards. But that's something you have. So it's like extinguish the fire. 2 or 4 will let you move or fire action to improve the tank's move or fire level. We'll talk about fire level. Or 2 order icons during a spotting attempt to pull 1 additional card for spotting. 3 order icons with a fire action to quick load an APCR round, so you can load those special ammo we talked about. So those order icons can be useful. Now, other information, this number here is basically your percentile number. So some actions you'll have to draw, and if that number is lower than the number you needed to do a particular action, then you succeed, kind of a thing. Over here, this is basically like the combat roll. This is if you're looking at a data card for a tank, which we'll look at. If you draw this card for your attack and this number is lower than the value needed to hit, you hit. This also gives you the number to match up with a damage card to see if you get a critical hit. And then this pin mod. Every time that you successfully hit, you're going to draw a card to check for the pin number. This reminds me of Panzer 2nd Edition with this pin modifier so much. In Panzer 2nd Edition, if you play the basic rules, you just checked your penetration value versus armor, and if you pinned, great. Then as you got to an advanced rule, you got variable penetration mod. And in the game, it kind of explained that narratively to be like, possibly lower grade steel was used on that particular vehicle in that particular spot. My son, when we played, he'd be like, oh, I guess the guy who was pouring that was drunk on vodka and messed up the whatever, and so possibly the armor is weaker, or maybe it's stronger. The vice versa, maybe when you have a pin mod, a -1 is not good. Maybe the round you used, the angle that the round is hitting the target isn't exactly square on, so you're either it's bouncing, chance of bouncing, so it's not hitting very well. So a lot of little details put into this one little number on the card, narratively speaking. But then, if you get a heavy hit, that will affect the type of damage you do. So when you hit a target, and we looked at the damage cards If you do a heavy damage, there's greater chances of, like, you know, killing people, damaging important components of the tank. Or if it's just white, that means it's a standard hit, and then you read the lesser of the damage, that's light damage. So again, lots of variation just on one little tiny box of information. Now it does say though, if your tank is firing an 85 millimeter or larger shell, it's always heavy damage. So like Tiger tanks, always heavy damage when shooting like T-34s and stuff like that. So possibilities of wiping someone out in 1 or 2 hits, sometimes 1, yeah, happens quite a bit. All right, so that's some of the information on the cards. Let's take a look at these tank cards. That's the part that that's what drew me to this. That's where I said to myself, man, these are awesome. And there's a bunch. What did we say? 16? I'm not going to count them all out. If you watch my unboxing, we look at all of them and we show you what you have. But let me take the rules out for a second here. Some of the player aids. I had here, this is probably what I play the most, is if I'm showing somebody or if I'm, you know, just passing some time. Usually it's like a Panzer III versus a T-34. But what a lot of people want to play, I don't know why, but a lot of people want to play, let me find it in here. They don't really go for like the Yag Tiger too much, honestly. People like to play the Panther and the Tiger. Like those are the most popular requests that I have. People are like, "Oh, I want to play a Tiger. I want to play." Oh, I saw the word Tiger. Where'd I go? Sorry, flipped it wrong. No, it's another Panther. I had a Tiger. I swear I saw a Tiger. Hold on. There it is. Sorry. Back that up. People either really want to play a Tiger tank or a Panther tank. I don't blame you. They're really, really good, actually. And I'm going to leave those out here for a second. We'll talk about how good they are compared to some of these other tanks. Where's that Panzer III I had? I'll show you that here in a second. So we'll compare those two in just a moment. Now, when you're playing, I'm going to show you how you play a little bit and how that ties into this. Now, I had all my counters put away because we were looking at them. So let me grab a couple counters here. So here's your tank board. Tank board is important because that's where you track everything you need to know about what's happening on your tank. So remember, there's no tactical map. I'm going to rearrange that a little bit. So there's no tactical map. There's no moving on counters and things like that. Everything you need to do to track the battle is right here. So let's look at a couple considerations here. One, you're going to place your crew. Here's an assistant driver. Here's a gunner. Let me grab a couple more dudes. Here's the commander. Let's see, I'm just drawing them. If I get everybody cool. Here's a loader. Lots of commanders. Apparently I can't find a driver. Loader. Really? Really? Hand me that guy right there. Driver. So there's your crew. Now as you play, as they take damage, you can just flip it. Boom, assistant driver is wounded, right? And that's going to have some effects on your tank. Or if they're dead, let's say they die horribly from an explosion or whatever, they just get taken off and then it's KIA, right? Then you actually have an opportunity to kind of shift people around. It's just that then there's penalties because, yeah, you're trained to work in everybody's position, but you're never quite as good as the person you're replacing. So you have a little bit of crew management there because, again, the focus isn't on you moving several tanks and fighting each other. You can, but, you know, as a duel, right? So my focus is on this tank. Now, you have here move level and fire level. I'm going to grab a couple counters right here. This represents how efficient you are at these actions, whether it's moving or firing. Now, this is important because when you have your hand of cards, so I'm just going to grab a few cards here at random. Let's say this is what I'm playing with. When you want to do something like, let's say you go, I want to shoot, and it's a move 7. Well, the thing is, your tank ability has to be this number or higher. So like move 7. So I'd have to have my move level on 7 or more if I wanted to play this card. And again, this is a 92. So it goes back to saying that the higher numbered cards are not as good. Because if I had, like, check this out. This is a 26. It's a fire 2. So the lower number cards are really, really good to have in your hand. But remember though, if let's say I really had to move, let's say the scenario I'm at, I got to get to a location in order to start accumulating victory points, I have to move. I could discard 2 of those operational or order icons, right? These things right here. And then I could, for that turn, modify my move level as needed to improve it by 1, so that I could now use that move 7 card. All right, so you have a couple ways to modify how your crew does stuff, but that's what those levels are for. That determines what specific cards you can use when it comes to like fighting and moving and whatnot. All right, and then on here it talks about victory points. So as you kill off people, this is how many victory points your opponent is getting. Here's equipment that this tank can have. It can have a radio. It can have that special ammo, APCR, and it can have smoke. If your tank is not smoke capable, you can't use smoke. If it doesn't have APCR, it's not going to have special ammo. And there's even some optional rules on radio communication. So again, all that's there for you. On here, you also have basic terrain. So if you don't play a specific terrain card like woods, you are always in the open. So not always a good place to be. So one of the things that you can do in your turn is, as you're playing your tank actions, is you might want to use a move card in order to get into the woods. Now what's cool is if you play a move card, you're going to move along this range track. So your scenario that you play might say everybody starts out at range 800. So that is 800 yards away from a imaginary center of the battlefield. I'm 800 yards away from that. So my opponent then, he could be anywhere on his range track. So if my opponent was also at 800, that means there's 1,600 yards distance between the two tanks. And then as you move, you might want to move closer. Maybe you want to get further away. Maybe you're in a Tiger tank and you want to take advantage of your really long range. So you're going to stay at 800, if you will. But move cards will let you move. You also, if it's flanked, it says you can, if flanked, pull a battle card to remove one flank. And if you pull the right card, you're going to move flank. But if you play a move card, this vehicle is now considered in motion and has penalties to be shot at. Has penalties to shoot at other stuff too. But what a lot of people do is they're going to use a move to move into, say, woods. So you're going to move into terrain. And again, that's all abstract. So there's no hex that you're moving into, but you just tell your opponent, hey, I am moving. Now, this is where you would stop because your opponent might say, oh, you're moving? Well, here's some mud. You didn't reach the forest in time. Mud. But let's say they didn't have a mud. And you say, okay, this tank moves, and he gets into woods. And this just kind of tells you the present state of your tank. Is it in motion or is it in terrain? Or did it move and you just stopped it out in a field? All right, but that's what this field box is for. Are you moving or are you in some kind of terrain? All right, here's where you would track your special ammo if you had any. So we'll just say, yeah, I've got 2 of these things. So I'm just going to stack 2 markers. And you can either use those order icons to quickly load a special round of ammo, or part of your turn you can preload ammo. Now on your abstract range, as you move closer to each other, when you get to this 400, 200, and 0 yards apart, that means you're like right on that DMZ line. You get to add 1 to your hand size. So normally your hand size is 4 for your entire side, and you get 2 cards per tank. So if you're playing just 1 tank, you're going to start out, if you're out here in the 6, 8, or 1,000, you're going to get 6 cards. So as you move closer, that means you're getting, like, I don't know, better situational awareness of your opponent, and so then you can, you know, get more cards. Also, there's that hold down indicator. So there's a chance here that if I spend an action, I could try to go hold down and get some protection for the tank. And then there's a little marker where I could put the hold down. Are they hold down? Yep, there it is. So I get some protection bonuses for that. They're hold down. Here is where you put your spotting markers. Now if you notice up here, you've got the name of the tank. This is a size modifier for shooting at it. A small Panzer III gets a -5 to hit because it's small. And this is the number of the tank, which is how we can track spotting. So I grab a 4. Okay, well, is there a 3 handy? Yeah, here's a 3. So let's say somebody was spotting me. They would just put this here in this little targeting box and go, yep, I have spotted tank 3. So usually if somebody moves or fires, you're going to be able to spot that tank. And this is where you would also put this little I'm shooting at you again token. Now if I had, let's say I spotted tank 3 and tank 4 on the opponent, and if I wanted to focus my fire on tank 3, then I lose spotting to the other tanks because now my crew is determined to shoot tank 3. So this is where you handle all of your spotting. There you go. That's kind of the basics right there. Very simple. Draw your cards. That determines your hit, determines damage. And I'll show you what that little sequence looks like because that's where this portion of the board in. This is your combat stats. So if you want to shoot at something, you're going to determine your range. So let's say both of us are at the 200, right? So that's 400 yards apart. So I just look right here, range, 400. This tells me, based on my 50mm quick 39 long-barreled 60 centimeter, whatever that is, gun, I need an 82 to hit, and at that range, there's a penetration value of 7. And if I was using my armor-piercing composite rigid shell, I add 4 to the pin. Ooh, so special ammo. And then down here, this also tells me the hit location based on my targeting roll. Did I hit the whole turret or the track? All right, now, that's why I said this play aid is amazing. So if we're playing a turn, let's just say, it says there's a draw phase. So what you do, player's hand size is 4, modified by +2 cards for each tank. And here's some other modifiers. +1 for each card within that 400. -1 for each tank they control that has a green crew, which is based on your commander. -1 card for each tank they control with a KIA commander. -1 for on fire or broken card in the initiative card box. So let's say I drew my hand of 6 cards because this is one tank. We'll say he's in the woods. So I draw. Boom, there you go. Then you do the initiative. Players bid for initiative. Now this is the part that always, I think bidding in games is amazing. This is where you bluff out. And you also have to decide how important is it that you go first. Because the person that plays the lower number is going to go first. But remember, these lower number cards generally are the best cards. Like look, see this is a 17. I can play a mud or I can fire at you with a 2. That means I'm good. Whereas if I have this mud of 90 card, it has a fire 9. I would have to spend order icons to improve my fire level to use this card to shoot at someone. Now then I have to discard cards to meet the order icons just to play this. Yeah, but then that means but see, here's the thing. I might want to play that card because that card kind of sucks, right? But it's a 90 on the initiative, so that means I'm probably going to lose initiative. But I don't have to try and figure out how to use this as a fire card, right? So there's that little bit of planning on your part. Do I want to use a card? Or like, see, the fire, right? Fire 2, it's a 26. That's pretty good. I probably could win initiative with that. But then it's a fire 2 card. All I have left in my hand is the fire 9 card. So do I want to go first and figure out how I can fire? Or just go last with my crappy 90 card and be able to fire when it's my turn because I can use a fire 2 card, right? Still, even the bidding has got a little bit of mental gymnastics on your part to play. Then, once you have determined what card you want to use, I'm going to use this flank. That's a 7. So what you do is you place it face down. Okay, so now I drew my cards. I've done all this mental gymnastics to figure out what I want. And then it says, well, then it's the bid. Once it's all done, everybody flips, and you go, boom, I'm a 7. Booyah, off the table, chump. Then you go into the tank phase. That's when you do an action. So there's an admin step. And what's cool is, admin step right down here. Boom. First thing you do, just follow the step. That's why this game is really easy to follow. It has a good flow. Just follow the steps. Discard my initiative card. Okay, I'm going first. And when you discard, everybody who still has a card on their tank hasn't gone yet. You just go in numerical order from lowest to highest. Easy, right? So here we go. This tank, discard. I have an imaginary discard pile over here. Then you do a smoke check. All right, if I had somehow placed smoke on my tank, which I've got smoke cards somewhere buried, then I check, is the tank on fire? And it includes the rules for dealing with the tank that's on fire. Then you do a morale check. Did your tank get busted on a damage card and it failed morale for something? How to handle that. And then finally, as an optional rule, are you buttoned up or open hatch? Boom, admin step done. And if you don't have a tank on fire or a tank where you had to do a morale check, the turn goes rather quick. You just kind of blow through the admin step. Then it's the action step. And here's some things with the action step. Here's your actions. Play your battle cards. Are you doing a leadership card? Are you firing? Are you moving? And it just summarizes some of the rules right there. Easy. Right? There's even field actions. So you can play any number of your command cards. You can play any number of terrain cards on enemy tanks that are in motion. Discard any battle card to stop moving. Which is sad because if you didn't stop in woods or something, you're stopped in the field and you're an open target. You can do any number of scenario-specific field actions or optional perform one and only one infantry advance or infantry attack. Boom, it's all right here. All right, so let's say I'm going to fire. I have this fire 2 card that I used. Oh no, I used my flank, right? So now I'm like, okay, now I'm going to fire. I want initiative. I'm going to fire at you, right? So I'm going to put that here as a reminder that I'm firing. Then we calculate all the bonuses to hit. So right here, this card has a +5 to hit. And let's say I'm shooting another Panzer III, -5. So that cancels each other out. So no modifier there. I would look to see if I've got crew bonuses. I'm going to pretend this wasn't an elite crew or anything like that. So we'll just say basically my to hit at a range of 400 is 82. Maybe there's some other cards you have in your hand. There's actually a couple which, if I was to dig through, wasn't the leadership? I believe it's the tactics card. All right, hold on. Of course, I can't find it now that I want it. No, this is it. Let's say you had a leadership card. See, it says here, you can either use the action here on the top or add +20 to hit when played with a fire card. So let's say I had a leadership card. I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to add 20 to that. That now takes my 82 up to 102. Really hard to fail. But then your opponent might have a leadership to counteract that. Also, depending on the terrain. Well, let's say this guy I'm shooting at is in the woods. Well, it says here, cover 10. So I have that 102, subtract 10 for cover. Now it's a 92. So not too bad. A little bit of calculating there, but nothing tough. Then we draw a card off the deck and we check to see if we hit. And this is my hit roll. 58 is lower than the 92. Now see, here's the thing. All of those steps are right here. We determine the base number and then it gives you some bonuses right there. Is a target acquired? Is it flanked? Any number of things. Subtracted cover, -20 if an uncancelled tactics card was played. So, okay, we got the base hit, we got my number, I rolled it. Determine hit location. If 2 fire cards active, player's choice. Okay, I didn't do 2 fire cards, I just did 1. Otherwise, pull battle card to determine hit location. So, we did a fire, I pulled to see if I hit, I would draw another card for location. That's what this little pin number, well, this little crosshair is. I was trying to think of the word. 3 on hit location is a hole. I would check it on that tank, but if I was shooting here, 1 through 3 is a whole hit. All right, cool, whole hit. Then determine penetration value. Modify with terrain and special ammunition if used. And I would look. Now I did forget this part though. Do I draw again for that? That's the part I always forget. Do I draw again for... Yeah, there's not that many rules there, but just to determine the active tank's penetration value. Check the ordnance, modify the penetration value by adding the modifier for load of special ammunition. Oh, that's your penetration value, but the armor value. Okay, pull a battle card. Yep, I was right. So then you pull a battle card. Now, boom, I pull another card, and that's where I add this pen value to my penetration value. Right? We said it was a 7. I add +2, and it's a heavy shot. So if I penetrate the armor, I get to do heavy damage with this. So that's really cool. Then, armor. If I was shooting myself, I have an armor value here. Right here is the armor value. So let's say I shot in the hole and I'm shooting on the front, because if you got a flank, you'd shoot on the side. 5. Well, my 7 + 2, 9 definitely penetrated the front armor of this tank. And then I draw the damage card. Where did I put the damage cards? I draw a damage card, and I did heavy damage. So remember, I hit the hole. Now, one thing to do too, and this might be cool, is you check for the critical hit. So when I drew my hit card, I just want to make sure I tell you this correctly, because I'm always forgetting little details like this. But I'm going to make sure I get you told correctly. If it damage cards, pull the damage card, compare the target number on the battle card set aside in step H, which was the penetration value. And the target number on the battle card. Yeah. So here's your target number. And I mentioned this earlier. I just want to make sure I got this correct, because I've been known to forget things. But if that target number matches this critical hit number on the top of the damage card, it's a critical hit. Well, those didn't match up, so we're good. Alright, so what I'm going to do now is look at my whole hit, and I had heavy damage, and it says right here, driver. If it's all in bold, that means that person is dead. So that shot through the hole in the front killed the driver, so I take the driver off, and I set fire. So I grab one of those fancy looking fire cards, and in your World of Tanks voice, the tank is on fire. Then, as we go through the damage, on the next thing, it's, oh, I could have looked right here. I forgot. It's right here. There's your pull a damage card. But you're going to check for morale. So morale is here. So depending on the experience level of the crew, if it's green check mark, that means they passed the morale check. This actually had an exceptional commander experience, so they passed. And then down here, you would check to see these other conditions to see if they occur. So you've got, is the commander dead? Nope. Did the tank get immobilized? Nope. But is the tank on fire? Yep. That means they failed the morale check. So this tank failed morale, and they would go to broken. Oh, because they're failed morale. Yeah, so there you go. I know that seems like a lot of steps because I'm trying to explain it, but when you're just flying through cards, it goes rather quickly. I was trying to hopefully explain that process a little bit to you, but there you go. And that flips through a bunch of cards, and then that tank is done. And then again, you go back to your play aid. We did the tank phase, we did the admin, we did the action. Then we can discard. Discard is step 5. Active player may discard 1 battle card or 2 battle cards if the active tank occupies a red range. So again, if you're stuck with a bunch of cards you don't like, you can discard 1 or 2. And then you do reinforcement. That's how you bring tanks back. So that is one thing though that I did thought was kind of cool about this, is when you battle, and let's say I kill somebody, what's cool is they in the reinforcement can bring that tank back. So you never have a person who's necessarily out of the game all the time. There's always a chance that if you were playing like you and you and a buddy against 2 people, and you kill this guy's tank or gal, that person is going to come back in the reinforcement step. And you play until you hit the end of how many draws you do of this battle deck, and then you count victory points at the end. So it's kind of cool that way. So that's where these two cards that I set aside earlier, here they are, shuffle and end. So when you have your huge deck of 100 cards, there's a rule for how to shuffle this in. You take like the deck in half, you shuffle this into the bottom portion, you put this on the bottom of the deck, then you play through, and once you hit this one here for shuffle, I'll put it in there, I swear. But once you hit the shuffle card, you finish the action that you're on, then you shuffle the deck. And then the game is played where it says you play like 2 shuffles or 3 shuffles. Then when you're on that last shuffle that you've done, and you got to play one more time, you put the game end card. And then when you hit the end game, that's where you complete your action, and then you count up victory points. So that's how you use the end and the shuffle. So how many times you flip through. So really, all your tanks doing actions and things like that are rounds, and your turn is kind of determined by how many times you go through this deck of cards. Whew, that's pretty much the game in a nutshell. Alright, so what's the AI bot like? Well, the AI bot, I think, is very, very useful because, as you can see, if you're playing traditional solo where you're managing, say, 2 tanks against 2 tanks, and you're managing the deck of hand, the hand of cards that you have, holy cow, trust me, it's a lot of cards to have to keep track of. The AI system is actually really, really cool because it's designed to minimize that. So it does have a sequence of cards and specific rules for how you handle drawing of cards, and basically you don't have to worry about tracking a whole bunch of cards per tank. Usually it's like maybe 3, and that's used to determine the initiative card, and then after that you're pulling cards from the main deck. So that simplifies it a whole lot, and that's what this system does, is it tells you how to play the game that we just did, but just off that main deck for running your AI opponents. So it is so good. And you got your little flow chart as far as determining movement and things like that. So again, it takes a lot of those decisions off of you, so you can really just focus on running your set of tanks that you have. And it does a really, really good job of doing that for you. So I'm going to leave it at that. Like I said, I'm going to try and get up a full play one day. Maybe not full play, but do a few turns with the AI, just so you can see how that runs. Because this is already long. This is a huge review. So if you've watched this, thanks. I really appreciate that. So what I will do, though, is leave it with the last 2 components to really talk about. That is the rules of play and the playbook. And let me tell you, again, really, really well written set of rules. I needed to find something. I went to the section appropriate to the book and found it. I forgot that it was on the play aid. And that also speaks to the quality of the play aids. Everything you need to play the game is pretty much there, right? This just fleshes out the details. So the rules themselves are not overly long. You've got, where's page 17? It's really 17 pages of rules, because page 18 has like a paragraph on victory points and then your index of terms. And then the rules themselves read fairly well. What I did to learn the game was I didn't even read the rule book. I went straight to the playbook. Now this is where you should go. In fact, the book even tells you that. As you read, you get here to the overview of play and it says stop. Read the tutorial. So that's exactly what I did. And what I did here with the book, after I did the tutorial, we'll look at this in a second, I came back and read the rule book, and I felt I had a pretty good grasp of the game to start playing, which I did. And the playbook is fantastic. So this has, in the beginning, a brilliant tutorial. It tells you exactly what tanks to use, how to set them up, and then as you play, at least through the first turn in their tutorial, it tells you exactly what cards to draw, and then in detail it tells you exactly how to use that card in the game as you play. So you're learning by playing the game. It's really, really good. Then, as you move on into a couple of their advanced turns, they give you less hand holding, but by that point you're already referencing things in the rule book to reinforce the points that they're teaching you. So this is really, really good. And in fact, when you do like the combat, it tells you exactly what cards to pull from the battle deck. That way you can read the results in the rule book or in the playbook as it's explained, so you can understand how those mechanics work. Yeah, it's a really, really good tutorial. I'll tell you that much. Really good. And then it goes through the initiative phase, like all the steps is so good. The first few pages is all dedicated to that tutorial. And then finally it wraps up. Then you get to advanced and optional rules that covers some of your infantry. Then it's got you know, buttoned up infantry attack rules, infantry advancing. Then some scenarios. What I really like here, we'll look at some scenarios here in a second, but what I like too is right here, suggested tank matchups. So if you didn't want to jump into a full scenario, it's got right here, it says, you know, hey, bring a Panzer III against a T-34. Or take your Panther or a Tiger against some T-34s or KV-85. So it gives you some matchup there, because it didn't have like a point system, but it does give you an idea of, you know, hey, a couple of these would be good against a couple of those. Or like here it says 2 Panthers against 2 KV-85s, for example. Or 2 of those and 1 Su-100s. Then here you got tanks by year, tanks by size from smallest to largest. So again, just some ideas on if you want to customize your own scenario. Then you have the scenarios. And you got merging forces. It tells you what alternate cards that we looked at. So again, you would pull out the corresponding basic game card, throw in one of these alternate cards, and now you have a landscape shaped for this battle. And then what you bring in if you want to use your infantry, hold the high ground, break out of the pocket. Again, it's showing you the alternate cards to use, or infantry and gun card data if you're using those optional rules. So, scenarios. At the end of the scenario, at the end, the Solitaire rules. And the Solitaire rules do add a layer of complexity to it, and it's got its own rules to learn. But it gives you a couple pages of rules, and then it also has a nice example of play. So you can do this kind of this similar item is just set things up and just kind of pull those specific cards it's talking about out to look at them, the player aids, and follow along. But yeah, it is a really good system. So the Solitaire, even though it's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pages, it's not that bad to pick up. I don't like reading rules, so I'm always looking at, man, 6 pages. But again, it's one of those things where once you start playing it, it starts to kind of make sense. So then you have a card index, and then designer notes, developer notes, notes about historical scenarios, and then you get to the infantry rules, KIA crew effect reference, because again, sometimes your people die. Whew, man. That's about as comprehensive as I can get for you on this. So again, if you watch this whole thing, wow, hopefully that gives you an idea of what you're getting into with Tank Duel. It is, so to wrap it up there, you know, good, bad, I've already covered some of that, right? The bad is some people don't like card-driven games where the cards determine all the dice rolls and all that stuff. Some people are totally cool with that. I'm fine with it. It works for me. I think it works for this particular game just fine. I like the artwork. I think they did a really good job on these cards for the tanks. I didn't even talk about that, but these things are super thick. They're going to hold up well to lots of play. All the information you need about that tank is right there. The visual aspect and your crew management is kind of fun. Yeah, it's not counter heavy at all. I'd say though, like if you want to talk about how does this compare to, because when I did my unboxing and my playthrough, people were talking about Up Front. This is like a completely different level of game from that, right? Up Front, I've never played Up Front, but from what people are telling me, that's like Solitaire squad leader kind of thing. And it's got the infantry, it's got vehicles and things like that. This has infantry too, but they're played at completely different ways. This, I think, is maybe a more accessible game. I think this is, and I think I mentioned this in one of the other videos, I like this game as a filler. Right? I'll call that a filler, right? It's not a simulation. It's not going to replace your squad leader or anything like that. But this gives you something to play maybe when you're waiting for other folks to show up for game night, or you don't have much time, or your table space is limited. This doesn't take up a full table to play. Even if you bring like 2 tanks against 2 tanks, that doesn't take up your entire table. So quick to learn. I think what did we say on the back of the box? 14 years old to learn it. Yeah. Oh, I just knocked some stuff down. My son is 16. He had no problem picking it up. So 14, yeah, like I said, you could probably go a little bit younger. But this is a fun visual. And that's the thing where I was mentioning in other games too, is some people, especially younger folks I've dealt with, because they're so used to like video games and things like that, they're more visually orientated, it feels like. And I can't say that about everybody, but this is a very visually oriented kind of game, right? You've got this big data card. All the information you need is here. You've got your crew, driver, everybody is here. It's all visually represented. You know, maybe not hold down. And this gives you things to interact with. So you actually feel like you're part of this crew. So there's a little bit of immersion in this, right? And you really don't want to lose your driver. There's not much you can do about it, because when your tank is shot and that round penetrates and the driver's dead, it's, oh, well, they're gone. You know, that's you know, no name on them because it's just driver, right? But there is a sense of concern. It's like, my driver. Then you got to manage people. So there's a little bit of tactileness with this as well. So as far as maybe an introductory game for some folks, I think this would be really good as well to lead them into other games. So all in all, I've had a good experience with this. Is this a game that I'm going to play like all the time? Well, just like a lot of folks with a lot of games, no. I've got so many, right? But if someone was to say to me, hey, you want to play Tank Duel? I'd be like, yeah, let's play a game of Tank Duel. I'd be fine with that. So all in all, I don't do points for reviews or anything like that. So I'm going to say, just to wrap it up, yeah, I think this is a good one. If you were on the fence, hopefully I've explained a little bit about it. You can make a decision from that. If you go back and find my gameplay, maybe that will explain things a little bit more for you. But I would say go for it. Yeah, give it a shot. You know, obviously, if you're not a card-driven fan, you know, this might not be the game to bring you to that. But if you're not adverse to card-driven games where everything is determined by the cards, no dice, no charts, yeah, I would say this would be a good option for you. That's about it. Hopefully, this has given you some thought to it. And again, hey, if you've got comments or thoughts, have you played the game? Do you like it? Do you hate it? What do you like? What do you dislike about it? I'd be happy to hear from you. I always like to hear what other people are playing and what they think of a game. Otherwise, I think that will wrap it up. Wow, an hour and 3 minutes according to this. That's a lot of time. I need like a reward system for people who actually watch an entire thing and give you some kind of reward, you know, like, oh yeah, you've earned your sergeant first class if you put up with